All right, a very good morning to everyone. It's good to see everyone again. Can everybody hear me? If you all can hear me, can put a one in the chat box. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to see everyone again. Now I'm not sure everybody want to see me or not. Reason is because normally when you all see me doing this session is MCO again. Hopefully next time I see you all it's no longer MCO. So how is everybody doing? Everybody doing good? All right. Okay, let me just bring up my slide. Okay, so I'll be going straight into it lah. All right. Oh, and before that, oh shit. Um, there are times I'm not looking at the camera because I am presenting it from the tablet. All right. So I'll begin now. So today, okay, maybe a quick introduction. My name is Wing. So I basically run a team, a platform in MC2, platform named ACE. All right. So mainly focusing in project marketing, but we might look into secondary market. Okay. So in today's presentation, basically is a 1 hour session whereby I will review some of the NAPIC data, which is released by them a month ago, for the first half of 2020. So basically, this is the agenda that I will be covering. I might not be cover everything, but I will make sure I'll cover all the main points. So as usual, I will start with a property transaction. Okay. Now I will not elaborate why property transaction is very important because I've done this in the previous sections. If you all want to know why, you all can go and revisit back the videos in YouTube. um, Property transaction is like the lifeline for our industry. All right. So this is the most important for us. So if you look, this is the property transaction for first half 2020. Okay. As usual, we will begin by looking first at the volume. Okay. What happened in the first half 2020 means that in January 2020 to June 2020, there is a total 115,000 transactions. All right, there's 115,000 transactions that happens for the first 6 months of 2020. And those transactions is of value close to 47 billion. All right, 47 billion. Now, of course, I know some of you all might be shocked to see that from if you compare year to year, the first half of 2019 and 2020, you can see that there's actually a huge drop. And the drop is in terms of volume, there is a drop from close to 28% drop in terms of volume, and also in terms of value, there is a 31% drop. All right. Now, let's now zoom into what exactly happened for the first 6 months in 2020. Now, before I go into this data, I just want to highlight here is that what happens in the mid of March, what happened was that we went into MCO, and then it was lifted mid of May. All right, we went into a conditional MCO in May. All right, so you can see in this chart, in terms of volume, the first 6 months, we were doing okay in January and February. All right, and you can see that then the volume start to drop in March, and we hit our lowest in April. Now, why this happened is, I believe I've already highlighted, is because we were undergoing MCO. All right, so everything was locked down. There wasn't much that everybody can do. So which is why in terms of volume, you can see April was the low. But if you look back May, things got better in May when we went into CMCO, and you can see that we actually had a quick recovery as well. So you can see previously when everybody was mentioning about the V recovery, you can see that we actually had a V recovery. All right. So overall, to me, although there is a drop in terms of about 30%, but that is solely because of the MCO. And in terms of value, you can see we see the similar trend is also a V. So we were doing fine January and February, and then we had the worst month in April. But after that, uh, we if you see in the month of June, we actually returned back to before MCO. All right. So so I think the most important for today's session here is that if you are not able to get the rest of the session, what is the most important for today's session is basically if you can see in terms of real estate industry, we are actually in quite a good shape, right? It's not as bad, right? The drop is solely because of the MCO, whereby the all the economic were put to a complete stop. All right. Got any questions so far? Because I realized the last time I was going too fast. I never see the session. Um, if anybody got any question, feel free to put in the chat box, and I can address it as I goes by. Okay, if not, I will proceed. Now, this is basically to indicate what happened to the different subsector in the first half of 2020. Okay, so overall we did see that there is a drop, but if you can see that this drop does not solely impact any one of the subsector. So if you can see all the subsector, it was impacted, and the impact was almost identical. All right, so it is like it impacts the whole real estate industry, so no one is being spared. Okay. Now, in terms of volume and also value, 65% of the volume of the transaction is still in the residential market. All right. And also in terms of value, out of that 65% of the transaction, it constitutes 55% of the value, and is also in the residential market. All right. So this is not surprising if you look at all the previous data. Residential market still has the biggest chunk in terms of volume and also in terms of value. Okay, now this is looking it in terms of price range. All right, price range. So if you look at the number of transactions just now, 65.3% of the transaction, which is 75,000, is actually below the 300,000. All right, 65% of the transaction is actually below 300,000, and the above 500 and above is basically 13,000 and 6,000 each. All right. So in terms of real estate market, I believe most of us are going after this market, okay, because it's more lucrative, it's more rewarding. But we can also see that there is a huge chunk of transaction which is below the 300,000 range. But of course, if anyone looking at the below 300,000 range, then the business model is very different altogether. All right. So if you look at the right hand side, this is basically to indicate those transactions. 72% of it is actually a transfer between individual and individual, which means that it is in the secondary market, whereby an individual owner transfer it to a new individual buyer. Okay. Now this is to show in terms of state. So Selangor, the top three state is Selangor, Johor, and Perak. All right, Selangor is still number one spot, which 21,000 transaction. And KL is over here. There is 5,400 transaction. Okay, so if you plus up the Selangor and KL, you can see that the central region that it's still 23.3% of the transaction. Okay, that was the overall data in terms of the property market. Right now, we will look into the residential data. Okay, we'll look into the residential data. Okay, in terms of residential data, residential for first half 2020, you can see 40%, 41% is terrace home. All right. Out of the 75,000 units, 30,000 is actually a terrace home. All right. Followed by next is condominium at 11,000 units. Now, in terms of the price range, 46,000 of the units is below the 300,000, and the above the 500 to 1 million is 9,000, and above 1 million is 2,600 transactions. All right. So basically, this is to show the residential subsector only for first half 2020. So the most number of transaction is terrace house, and the price range is below 300,000. Okay, so in terms of residential property by state, Selangor is also number one with 17,000 units, followed by Johor and Perak. All right, so you can see the top three states: Selangor, Johor, and Perak. And KL is over here with 4,100 units. This is in terms of residential unit by state. So Selangor is still contributing the most with 22.8% of the transaction. Okay, I will skip this. Okay, next one is commercial data. Okay. Now this, just now we were looking at the residential data. Right now we are looking at the commercial data. Now, 51.8% of the transaction is terrace shop. All right, 4,200 of the units is terrace shop. Now, I want to pull everybody's attention here is that if you look, service apartment is actually under the commercial transaction. All right, so this is the service apartment whereby the land title is a commercial, but the residential unit is under Schedule H. So you can see there's 1,400 transaction for service apartment. Now, if you look at the right hand side by the price range, you can see that it is more spread out. 2,500 of the transactions is below 300,000. All right, but then you can also see that between the 500,000 to 1 million, there's also another 2,200 transactions. Now, this is by state. This is by state. So the most number of transaction again is still Selangor, Johor, followed by KL. So you can see this is for the commercial subsector. This is the top three. So you can see KL actually from the bottom half came to the third placing. So this is the top three for commercial subsector, which includes the service apartment. All right. So I'll move to industrial. If you look at industrial, 57.3% of the transactions are terrace and semi-D factories. So it's basically these two. So the terrace and the semi-D factories constitute 57.3% of the transaction. And if you look at the price range, most of it is above the 1 million price range. So which is why if you can see the industrial market is a very niche market, but it's a very lucrative for those highly specialized negotiator and also estate agent. This is the transaction by state. This is transaction by state. So you can see the number one is 680 units. They are in Selangor and Selangor, followed by Johor with 252 units. So if you are doing industrial, so most of the transaction you can see is in the state of Selangor. Okay, that is in terms of property transactions. So I've shown the transaction in terms of the whole Malaysia, and then after that we look at the residential market, then we look at the commercial market, and then we also slightly touch on the industrial market. So in terms of the transaction, anybody has got any question?
Hey Wing, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Because I'm the only guy that's allowed to unmute my mic. So quick question. When you see all this pattern of transaction, all this report, right? How do you find this compared to 2019's report? How is there any similarities? Is there any pattern that's different, or is it just pretty much the same?
Okay, actually, to be very frank, I don't see much difference. Okay, I don't see much difference, which is why, like I say, the key takeaway that I wanted everybody to leave this room is, of course, we did see in terms of volume and also value, there is a drop between the 20 something to 30%. All right, but that drop is solely because in the month of April. All right, it's solely because in the month of April, and we all know it's basically because of MCO. All right, so which is why I am not too concerned with the drop of 20-30%.
Got it. And so people are still out there. Buying a home is still a priority, right? Looking at the data, the residential market is still a very robust market. It is still a market that has opportunities for agents like us to go in there and make some money.
Now, based on this data, you can see that we actually underwent a V recovery. Our recovery was very well. If you can see in the month of June, we were basically back to January, February range.
Yeah. Right. So the consumer didn't change their behavior. They still want to buy properties. They still want to buy a home, or they want to change home. In fact, it could have affected their perspective of how a home should look like right now based on the current situation, right?
Correct. Of course, there are things that change. But what I just want to highlight here is that in terms of transaction, which is what we are all going after, it is there. All right, it is there. So if you don't see transaction in your business, then you need to really check the powers of your business.
Correct. So basically, what Wing is saying that if there's a lot of transaction here, and if we are not transacting, that means something that we are doing is not getting the transactions. It's not that the transaction doesn't exist. It's not that nobody is buying, nobody is selling. That's not true. Somebody is selling, somebody is buying, and you may not be the one that is in part of that transaction. So you've got to evaluate what's going on in your business right now. Is that fair to say? Fair to say statement, Wing?
Right. Correct. Yeah. Which is why, like I mentioned just now, if you don't get what I try to say for the rest of the session, is okay. But this is very important. I think this is a key point that everybody needs to understand.
Okay, I'm good. Back to you.
Okay, so I'll continue. So this is transaction. So I will move next to the value. All right.
Sorry, Wing. There's a transaction. Is this transaction for new development, sub-sales, and lelong? And this is also in light with the reduction of OPR and HOC?
Okay, if you look at if you look at, okay, now I never go through this slide, but what I just want to highlight here is that if you look at what they put here is that this data is actually primary but plus secondary market. Okay, but how much of the secondary market data is in here to be verified, I'm not too sure. All right, so lelong is actually a secondary market. Secondary market. So I'm just trying, okay, the primary market, sorry, you can see this data is primary plus secondary, all right? But how much of the primary data is represented in here? That one, I myself has a question mark.
Yeah, but you have that chart just now talking about the transfer, the number of transfers between individual and individual, and then developers and individual, right? So that the transfer data will be a very good implication, right?
Correct.
This will be a good implication to see that if I look at this quickly on a naked eye, I'm seeing that about 70 to 80%, or maybe less than that, maybe 70% of all transactions are between sellers and buyers, are between a secondary transaction. That's what the data is telling us. About 70% are sub-sale transaction, likely to be sub-sale transaction because it is a transfer between individual and individual. You can see that, right? This is a very important data. And I think the other part that you put out there is that you have about 20,000 worth of transaction. That is where most of the negotiators in the Klang Valley region will be looking at, which is about close to 20,000 transaction, which is the 500,000 to a million and above a million, right? So there is still a lot of transaction going on there right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then of course those doing project don't have to be too worried, because I believe not all the project data is captured over here. Especially the high rise when the title is not issued yet. So I believe it's not captured over here. Right.
Yeah. So the transfer is captured when the title is transferable. So unless your project is at a point where superstructure is completed, the MOT is ready for transfer, then you will have that particular title registration data. So the data we are seeing here is by registration, right? So your bookings or the SPA side for projects may not be reflected here.
Right. The later part of the session, if I've got the time, I will show you another data that is more primary market driven data. Okay. Sorry with the notification, I don't know how to turn it off. I will look into that. Okay, now we look at the property value report. Okay, now let me spend a little bit of time here. Although in terms of the house price, like I mentioned before, it's not important for us for our business. But because a lot of our clients do ask. So this is Malaysia house price index. Okay, Malaysia house price index. And basically, if you look at this data, it is showing from 2010 up to 2020. Okay, and the data here is showing the Q1 and Q2 only. Okay, so the green color bar, okay, is basically to indicate the Malaysia house price index. Okay, if you see the Malaysia house price index at Q2 2020 is actually 198.3 points. Now, what this 198.3 points means is that if the house is worth 100,000 in 2010, the house price would be 198,000 in Q2 2020. Okay, so this is the house price index. So you can see the house price index has been on the rise. And of course, lately when 2018 onwards, then we were basically going the horizontal. Okay. Now, what is the orange color line? Now, orange color line is basically to compare on a year-on-year basis. All right, it's comparing Q1, Q2 2019 and also Q2 2020. All right, so if you can see in terms of year-to-year comparison, we are still seeing positive growth. Although for Q2 2020 is at 0.4 or very close to zero already. All right. So from this year-to-year comparison, you can see the first half of 2010 to 2014, we were seeing a very good growth, but this growth slowed down as time goes by. Okay. Whereas for the blue color line, this is basically compare quarter to quarter, which means that it is comparing Q1 2020 with Q2 2020. Okay, now for the first time ever, if you look at the quarter to quarter comparison, we are seeing a negative growth. Okay, which means that the house price index in Q2 2020 compared with Q1 2020, there is actually a slight drop. Okay, so you can see the house price index in Q1 2020 is 199.7, whereas in Q2 2020 is 198.3. So there is a slight drop of 0.7%. Okay, any question on this slide? Now, I'm not going to cover a lot in terms of pricing, but this is to indicate the house price index. Now, I see question on Malaysia trend in Q3 2020. Q3 2020 is not released yet. This is the latest released by NAPIC as of last month. All right. So normally they are 1 quarter to half a year behind. How do we check the transacted price? For the latest one, you can check in bricks, correct? For those in MC2, I believe you can check with the MCS, because MC2, I believe they have a bricks account. All right.
Wing,
Yeah.
when you see this quarter to quarter down of a 0.07 down in terms of price index indication, what does that mean to the market? Can you just kind of give your insights? What does that
If you really ask me, now to begin with, number one, like I always said, the house price is actually not important to our business. Okay. And number two, that small drop to me, it's not a very crucial or things that we should worry about. To me, I think it's it's okay.
does it mean that there is potentially room for adjustment of prices of property right now? Due to this, there's adjustment of prices right now, and it's adjusting downwards.
Correct. Now, if those who is on the ground, I think you have known the first half of the year, the price has been adjusting downwards.
Yeah.
All right.
So meaning if I'm an agent right now and I've got so many listings, but if I'm not working towards finding a way to adjust the price that is relevant to the market right now, and what we are seeing, the trend is downwards, that means we are not going to have much success, or we have a challenge of having success because we are not really working with the owners to adjust the price. Would that be a fair statement to say?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This is now this topic can actually go very deep. I think Monday you guys have covered it. Yeah, I think one of the things that everybody would need to work with all your owners is actually to get them to price at the current market price. If not, it will be a challenge for everybody.
And I know that most agents have challenge in how to start that conversation, or even to want to help the client adjust the price, because it is sometimes fearful of losing the listing. But I think based on the data is showing us right now, if we are not working on it anyway, you're not going to get a transaction. If you're marketing properties that is really above that and is against the trend, you are not going to do well in your business this year.
Correct. Now let us be realistic, is that we are not Superman. We are just here to facilitate the transaction. All right, we are here to facilitate the transactions. So there are those external forces we can't actually do anything. We just got to advise our clients accordingly. That is our job. There's a question on what is the price index for next quarter by Kyrie. I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball. but I don't think anybody here would dare to bet on the house price index would significantly go up. So I believe it will remain horizontal, right? Yeah. But then again, like I say, house price is not important for our business. Okay. Now this is the overall Malaysia house price index. The next slide is to show what is the impact to the respective subsector. Okay, so terrace, this is the subsector, terrace, high rise, semi-D, and detached. Okay, so you can see terrace house is still doing fine. Terrace house is still doing fine. Subsector which is slightly impacted is the high rise, semi-D, and also detached. Okay. Jimmy, regarding your question on what is our present market indicator, positive or very soft? Like I shown you just now in terms of number of transaction, I think we are back to the before the MCO level. So I'm not going to say it is positive, but it is not very soft. The transaction is out there. So what I'm trying I want to highlight here is that the month of June, the number of transaction is already back to the level of January and February. So it's actually not that bad at all, if you ask me.
Can I add something here? So that's a good question. 2020 August, the entire group transacted the most in the month of August in terms of deal close. We had the highest deal close ever record in the month of August this year. And I see a lot of agents who have multiple transactions right now in the month of August. Very high, very, very, very high transaction.
Right. And actually, I've got another indicator. Hopefully, I got time to reach there. That would actually paint a bigger picture on what is how healthy the market is right now. Okay. So I quickly okay, let's not do this one. Okay, that was the in terms of value. Right now we look at the primary market. Okay, the primary market, the unsold report. Okay, this is the overhang. This is the overhang for first half 2020. All right. So you can see first half 2020, there is a 63 billion. There's a 63 billion worth of units sorry, 63,000 units unsold at a value of close to 47 billion. All right. If you look at the trend, 2019 we see a slight drop, but first half of 2020 we went back up again. All right. So in terms of inventory of unsold unit, we are at record high again. So if you look at this 63,000 units, 31,000 units and 20 billion is in the residential market. And then another 21,000 unit, 18 billion is at the service apartment. All right. So you can see most of the overhang or unsold units is residential units. Okay. Okay. Now, this is still the unsold unit, okay? But this focuses on residential units, all right, on the different subsector, okay? Now, what this data is trying to highlight here is that if you look at the unsold units is ranging from the 20 something to 30 something range, okay? But if you can see, it didn't impact any particular subsector, all right? It didn't impact any subsector tremendously. You can see across board, it impacts all the subsector. Of course, if you look at this number, in terms of percentage, the most is semi-D and detached at 35.6. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that the whole overhang issue is not impacting any particular subsector in the residential market. Okay. Now, right now we are zooming into the unsold units. So there is 31,000 unsold units. Okay. 53% of the units are in the high rise. All right. And then another 29% is on the terrace house. So, so these two subsectors constitute most of the overhang issues. Now, what I want to highlight here is that now what is the difference between this number and this number is that this percentage is basically indicating is a ratio of all the unsold units. All right, which means that out of the 31,000 unsold units, 53% or 15% is at the high rise. Okay. But if you look at the subsector by itself, the high rise is actually doing okay, because if you can see 78.3% of the units are sold, 21.7 is unsold. Okay. Uh, and if you look at the price point, okay, if you can see most of the unsold units is below the 700,000 range. Okay, 500 to 700,000 is there's 4,000 units, and then 300 to 500,000 there is 3,800 units. Okay, this is for high rise. Okay, this is for high rise. In terms of high rise, the unsold units, the price point is below the 700,000 range. Okay, and as for terrace, the unsold units is between the 200 to 500,000 range. Okay. Elon has a question. Do they calculate overhang of secondary market? They don't, because overhang in secondary market is basically the inventory in the secondary market lah. So I'm not too sure I answer your question or not, because the overhang in terms of secondary market, it's actually it's not a relevant indicator. Okay. So if you look at the overhang issue when it comes to the state, the most number of units, residential units, 6,100 units is in Johor, followed by 4,800 and 4,600 in Selangor and Perak. All right, so this is the top three states with the most number of overhang units in the residential sector. And if you can see, KL is at the 5th position with 3,200 units. There's a question by Mary Go. What happened to the overhang 600,000 foreigner pricing in KL? Now, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but if you can see above the 600,000 range, when it comes to the residential market, you can see that is not the most impacted in terms of overhang issue. All right. So which is why everybody perceive that a lot of those unsold units is above the high value units. But if you look at this data, it's actually not. All right. So if I go a little bit further, if you look at this terrace house, the price point is between 200 to 500,000. If you ask me to guess, I don't think this is in Klang Valley. I don't think this is in Klang Valley. All right. And if you looked at the high rise, the unsold units, most of it is below the 700,000 range. All right. So if you look at this price point, if you ask me to guess, all these units could be at the outskirt of Klang Valley or the smaller units. All right. So the above 600,000, if you can see the the unsold units is actually not that great. And if you look at by state, if you can see KL and Selangor, there's only about 8,000 units out of that 31,000. So Johor is still the #1 spot.
Hey, Wing, it could mean that some of these 600,000 units are like those one-bedders, fully furnished hotel suite kind of
Correct.
stuff that they were selling to you. That hey, you're going to do your Airbnb right now. It's somewhere far away and it's $1,000 per square feet. But you know what? It's 500 square feet. It's one bedroom, 600,000, fully furnished. You will get your rental guarantees and stuff like that. So I think there are a lot of those kind of investment opportunities that happened last time was highly overly optimistic. And I think they're showing up right now that people are not buying into that right now. In fact, the trend has shifted. I think most of the developers selling one bedroom may not be the most popular choice unit right now.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I think we're seeing that trend changing. That not everybody likes to stay in the studio. Not everybody wants to stay in a one bedroom. So I think those are the challenges in those development that was built, I think a few years ago. That right now the market feels that hey, there's no value in buying a one bedroom at 600,000. There's just no value, right?
Correct. Correct. Now, for those who is really interested and really want to look deeper into it, you can actually go to the NAPIC website. There's actually a system for you to actually check based on the municipal. So you can actually zoom down to a lot lower, and from there you can actually able to see for your respective market that you are working on. Jimmy has a question. What will happen to property market long term? Now, if you ask me, if you look at the house price indexes now, every 10 years, the house price index would double. All right. So that don't just happen in 2010 to 2020. So if you look at previously as well, every 10 years it will double. So long term wise, I think we are doing great because of the population growth. Okay. Now for Kyrie, to answer that question, if you want to find out more, you can go to the NAPIC website, you register account, then you can play with the tool, then you can see better in the lower level which exact location and segment which is impacted. All right. Okay, this is unsold under construction. Okay, now don't confuse, the data that we seen just now is unsold complete construction. Okay, or they call it the overhang. All right, whereas this piece of data is basically to show unsold unit under construction. Okay, now normally when I look at this unsold under construction, I don't look at the unsold numbers, whereas I look at the sold numbers. Okay, so what this number tells us is that if you are doing project marketing, normally the projects haven't complete the construction. In terms of high-rise unit, 65.3% of the units will be sold. All right, and in terms of terrace house, 57% of the units will be sold. Okay, so it's if you are doing project marketing, so what this data tells you is that you should go and participate in the project which haven't complete construction. All right. Okay, I don't think I'll cover this. Okay, unsold under construction by state, So if you can see, Selangor has the most unsold unit, but the project is still under construction, followed by Perak and Johor at 10,000 and 9,000. All right. If you can see KL, there is 6,400 units unsold. All right. So for those doing project marketing, you are at the right place if you are doing Selangor and also KL. Okay. 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 Now, just now is under construction. Now is unsold, not constructed. Okay, unsold, not constructed, which means that these are the projects that is launched, but the construction haven't started yet. Okay, construction haven't started yet. So I want to pull everybody attention here is if you look at the high-rise unit, okay, 41.5% of the units will be sold even the construction haven't begin. All right. So this 41.5% of the high-rise units are sold before construction begin. So which means that these are the so you should, but if for those doing project marketing, you should go in at the very first phase, like the during the pre-launch phase or just launch phase, because 41.5% of the transaction is done during that period of time. All right. Okay, this is unsold, not constructed. So you can see most of the inventory is in KL. All right. So you can see suddenly KL come out number one. This unsold, not constructed, which means that these are the projects which is launched either end of last year or early this year. Okay. So you can see bulk of the units is in KL. And I basically, you know, I kind of know why it's in KL, because if you can see right now, most of the developments are happening in KL. All right. So from this data, we can see that the new project launching has slowed down. All right. And most of the launching is happening in KL right now, followed by Selangor. Okay. This is the residential units for the primary market for residential units. Any questions so far? Now, I'm not sure how many is still with me or you are already lost. All right.
Bing, do you know why do you think that most of the current unsold constructed units, unsold not constructed units are in KL? Is it because the demand in KL is still there for new homes, more than Selangor right now, as Selangor has more choices from the under construction and also the overhang? Why do you think there is that number there for KL?
Okay. I think it's the buying behavior that I mentioned a few months ago. Now, don't look at this number negatively. I see this number actually as an opportunity. All right. There's actually reasons why this is happening. From my perspective, is that I observe the buying behavior. People are going back to the KL because as the development in the outskirts of Klang Valley has reached a point whereby the price point has made the development actually not attractive anymore. It makes the development inside the KL city uh, 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 looks cheap, right? From what I observe. All right. So which is why if you notice, most of the development right now is going back into the KL city, the more prime areas.
Yeah, it's coming back central, right? Because I think when they go outskirts, for example, you've got these big developers in Semenyih, right? And they're selling landed houses for 800, 900,000 to a million. And then you realize actually for the same price, I could buy something nice in Tropicana or in SS2. For example, I could buy something nice in Cheras. I could buy something nice that is closer to where I live, where I work and all that. So I think there's a trend that is moving back where I think the market is adjusting its value proposition, the way consumer look at value right now, right? And not necessarily I'm attracted to that kind of fancy stuff, but it's just too far away. It's not convenient. Now reality sinks in. I still prefer to stay in KL. So if you're doing KL projects right now, this is the absolutely best time to look at it because I think the market is shifting and I think the developer sees it as well, right? If you have a project in Cheras, for example, for 500,000, you should be participating and sending the leads over there. If you have a Shah Alam link houses at 800,000, 900,000, you should be sending people there because the guys are staying in Semenyih, they are paying $1 million and they're realizing that's not the market for them, right? So I think there's an opportunity for us to see the trend over here. It's not that KL is overdeveloped. KL will always be overdeveloped because it's a city center. right? And I think if the price is adjusting right now, everybody is going closer to convenience and the value they can afford, right? And I think there is an adjustment in price. This is the best opportunity. I suspect the best agents in town today will make the most money in this market shift.
Correct, correct. For those who is interested or wondering about the shift in buying behavior, you can revisit those videos in our KW YouTube channel. There's actually a session that I talk about this change in buying behavior. But what John mentioned just now is I agree 100%. And the question whether KL is overdeveloped, I don't think it is. But if the first sector or the first area that will recover from all these crises, it will be KL. Julius, does this mean Rawang Township will be in trouble? Now, I would not say it will be in trouble, but their price will be under pressure. Anita, is it because the distance of working place? Now, Anita, to answer your question, it's very simple. Imagine if previously there is a house 400,000 where it is 20 kilometers away, and 400,000 maybe could be a little bit smaller, but it's just 10 minutes from your working area. Which unit will you buy? The 400,000 further away or the 400,000 nearer to your work area? All right. So which is why that is causing the change in buying behavior. Okay. So I need to move on. It's already 10 o'clock. So, okay, now this is commercial property. I won't go to, I just want to highlight certain thing here is that we just look at the service apartment. So this is a sole overhang, which means that these are the units which is really completed construction. So you can see for service apartment, 75.3% of the units are sold, only 24.7% of the units are unsold. All right. If you look at the service apartment subsector by itself, and then if you look at the whole, there is close to 30,000 units unsold. 72% of the units is service apartment. All right. And if you look at the service apartment, if you can see the unsold units is above the 700,000 range. All right. So 14,000 units unsold overhang, it's above the 700,000 range. Okay. And overhang commercial property, if you can see the greatest impact is at Johor. All right, Johor already has close to 18,000 of the units. All right, if you can see Selangor and KL, the number is there, but the issue is not that great as compared to Johor. All right. So this is unsold under construction. So we can see service apartments, 62.5% of the units will still be sold even before it complete construction. Okay. Yeah. I just want to, okay. Yeah, this is unsold. This is not construction, not constructed. So you can see 44.2% of the service apartment will be sold even before the project start construction. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far before I go to the last part? Do you think work from home would shift people further away from KL or to cheaper living? Okay, good question, Mazzy. Actually, this topic, right, we can actually debate for hours. There's actually two school of thoughts. Of course, if you look at this pandemic, one thing that could happen is that people could shift further away, but they want to stay in a bigger house. Okay, they want to stay in a bigger house. All right, so those bigger units, those terrace house or the semi-detached or the detached units, it could drive people there. But for those high rise, I think it will take time to recover. But the other second school of thought is that once all this recover, because of the cheaper price point in the KL, it would drive people move closer to their workplace. So there is two school of thought for this question. Melissa, availability of MRT and LRT, great impact of sale and residential units. Transit-oriented developments are still doing good. All right, transit-oriented developments are still doing good in from my perspective. Okay, so I'll move into the last part of the presentation today. I have not done this before. I mean, at this level, but on a smaller group, I've done this before. Now, this is actually bank loan application status. Now, this data is not released by NAPIC. This data is released by Bank Negara. All right. Now, this graph basically, I plot it based on the information released by Bank Negara. Okay. Now, what this graph is trying to show is that purchase of residential property, okay, residential property in terms of bank loan, okay. So you can see this blue line, this blue bar is the amount of loan applied, okay. This is the amount of loan applied. So this is January 2019 all the way to August 2020. Okay, this is August 2020. This is the latest data that I can see. So you can see January 2019, there is 20 billion worth of residential loan that is being applied. Okay, so and you can see the month of April and May, it was the worst hit. All right, so for the month of April, the loan applied dropped to about the 6 billion range. Okay, now what happened next? There was a question about, you know, how is the market, is it soft or not? So which is why if you look at this data, if you look at June, July, August, look at the loan application, it is at record high. All right, it 25 billion, and even for July it touched 30 billion. Okay, in terms of housing loan application, if you can see, June, July, August was the highest 3 months since 2019. All right, so which is why based on this data, I believe, to me, the market is not soft. So the activity is still very strong. Now, of course, this is a housing loan applied, and the orange color bar is loan approved. Okay, which means that blue color is the application and the orange color bar is basically the approved. So if you look at August 2020, there's about 27 billion loan application. There is about 10 billion loan approved. All right. So this line is to indicate the approval ratio. All right. Basically, is the loan approved divided by the loan applied. So if you can see the whole year of 2019, the approval rate is about the 40% range. All right, it's at about 40% range. And then the 2020, you can see that there is a drop. And the worst was in May, May and June. All right. So you can see the approval rate actually dropped to as low as about 22%. Okay, if you look at the worst approval rate month is June, whereby 25 billion loan applied, only about 6 billion loan approved. Now, why this is happening is because if you ask me, bank after during the CMCO period, bank were scared. Okay, bank was scared. They were pulling back. They were waiting for direction from Bank Negara. So which is why during that period of time, there is always all those red segment. There's a lot of segments that they do not do, so which is causing the approval rate to drop. But if you can see August, the approval rate has returned back to 35%. All right. So which is why now, Xiu Qing, your question is the approval ratio stricter guideline. That is what I believe. That's what I believe. One of the reason, but it's not the only reason. Okay. But what I want to show again from this graph is opportunity. Okay, opportunity. Now I'm not sure anybody can identify from this graph what is the opportunity. Can anybody put in the comment section, like what opportunity can you see from this graph? Anybody? Actually, this answer I have. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So what is the opportunity? The opportunity is here. The opportunity is here. Okay. Now, why I say that is opportunity is because if you see, there is 27 billion loan application, only 10 billion approved. Now, this 10 billion of buyers, they already buy their house, so they might not buy from us anytime soon. But if you can see, there's another 17 billion in the month of August 2020 that failed to secure their loan, which means that they want to buy a house, but they weren't successful yet. All right. So to me, this is, if you can see, this is the opportunity. All right. Yeah, some of y'all can already can capture this. So which is why from I believe this chart is it can better represent how the market is doing at this particular moment. All right. Is there any questions so far? Because I am going to stop right here. Now, of course, you all seen that there is some slide that I skipped because I cannot get it done in 1 hour. So my plan is that I would record video, a 4 episode, and I will release it into my social media platform. I hope by next week. All right. So then I would cover all the material.
Hey, Wing, just a quick observation from your chart here in terms of approvals. It could also mean that buyers are actually applying loans that they may not be able to afford, but they actually can afford something else, right? Maybe I went to apply for a loan that is ₦1 million, but actually I was rejected. I was told that you need to go and apply for a loan that's 700,000, 800,000. Then you can get approval, or $500,000, then you can get approval. So I think there are many of those buyers out there needs to readjust their expectation of what they can get for the income and the affordability that they have. So that's the opportunity right now. That's the opportunity for you to go out to the market. That means everybody wants to buy a home, but they are not being advised correctly. And you may be that person that will be able to advise them from a financial standpoint and a market movement standpoint. Is that true?
Correct. To me, this is where you and me can create value to these people. All right. So this is where we are going to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the negotiator. All right. So don't be scared by this low approval rate. All right, because this is a very general number. But if you ask me, the number that I see from our team right now, we are doing about, during the very bad times, our approval rate is about 50%. All right. So it's actually not that bad. It's actually how we actually qualify and educate our buyers.
Yeah. So I think the agent's role here right now has to go in there and behave like a financial consultant for a bit and sit down with the buyers and kind of consult them and understand really what is that particular affordability range you are in right now. And I think a lot of buyers, they are quite clueless one in a lot of this area. I don't know about you, Bing, but I've seen so many buyers, they think they can afford $1 million. They want it at $1 million, but the reality is I actually can only afford 700,000 right now, right? So I think that's where the value, the great value that we as agents, as people that's facilitating transaction, has that value to kind of consult them. And if the agents don't do that consultation, they are just trying to hunt and try to force people to buy something they cannot afford, right?
Correct. Especially those buyer agent out there right now. To me, showing a house, opening door, presenting the house, that is not the critical part. All right. The critical part is basically, finding out why they are buying. All right. And then helping them to complete their purchase. Now, this is where we all will make a difference. Now, if you are the novice negotiator, then this is where a lot of people will break.
So based on your current transaction, now you're selling this development in Stralam, and there are a few developments you're selling here right now. How does your team and the agents approach the buyer? Do they push the sale of the product? Do they consult? What's that thing that you guys do right now?
Okay, what I always tell the team here is that why I name the team Ace or the platform Ace is because I want everybody to analyze, consult, and empower. All right. So this is the strategy that I want the team to deploy when they meet those purchasers. So there's also a system that I get everybody to go through. All right. And because I always tell the team is that your client could potentially be buying their first home, all right, or they don't always buy very often. So they actually, most of them do not understand the process. They don't understand their affordability. So this is where we really need to address their concern and educate them on the process.
So go analyze their financial background. Try to understand their DSR, right? Even before you talk to a bank, right? You can actually analyze the DSR already, even without talking to the bank. Am I correct to say that?
Correct.
And then from there, you can give them an indicative or an educated guess. Hey, I think this is something that you may not be able to get approval. Why don't you look at this alternative right now, for now, right? Or find a way to build that income or minus that debt so that you could afford. Now, if you don't have that kind of conversation with buyers, right, it's very hard. I see so many agents, right, take a buyer, just chuck it to the bank. Let the bank sort out the problem for them. And the bank have too much things to do, and that's not the bank's job. I think it's the agent's job to make sure that the buyer is prepared and is educated to know that this is the opportunity that he has. And you see so many bank loan rejection is because the agent didn't prep the buyer properly, right? And then we blame the bank, but that's not true, because as an agent, we have to prep the buyer to make sure that they are qualified or pre-qualified to look at that product or that listing. And it doesn't matter whether it's a sub-sale or a project, it's the same thing. It's the same concept, right?
Yeah. No, I think to me, it's not a question of whose job it is. My question to everybody is that, do you want that transaction or not? Right. So, and it's actually not difficult. It's not difficult.
Correct. Now, there are some sophisticated buyers who are really clear of their own financial standing, then great. But I would argue that a big chunk of people don't have that clarity. A big chunk of people, they don't buy houses every day. Probably once in their life or once every 20 years, right? They don't get it right. And because you are professional, you have that value right now to offer to them.
Correct. Based on my observation, 9 out of 10, they don't know.
Yeah. Correct. So I think it's about us qualifying that kind of buyer and helping the buyer where they need. If the buyer is sophisticated, passing it to the bank, that's not a problem. But if the buyer is a new buyer, first-time home buyer especially, your guidance is very valuable. And once you successfully guided them to buy, they're happy, you will get that referral. That makes sense? Right.
No, I think let me explain something here is that now our role, now we don't promise the client that their loan can approve. Now this is a banker's job. What we can do is that if let's say their DSR comply, we can actually give them the confidence that the chances of them securing the loan is high. Then only they will place a booking with us. Or if let's say their DSR is on the borderline, then we actually can educate them on how they could improve their DSR. All right. Our job is basically to give them the comfort of mind that so that they would give us the booking.
Yeah.
All right. So do not mix up like we are not banker. We don't promise them. Even banker on the spot don't promise anyone whether their loan will approve or not.
Yep. Yeah. So, Bing, just a quick last follow-up question. What is your percentage based on your approach, your ACE approach right now? What's the percentage of conversion for your team right now in this challenging market as well? What's that? What's that like percentage ratio? If you don't
Right.
mind sharing.
Okay, I don't mind even sharing with you the numbers. Like I was just looking at it. Our worst month was May. All right. Why I say worst is basically we got 9 booking, but end up only 2 conversion. All right. But then after that, our conversion actually went up to about the 50% range.
Got it.
My target is actually 70 to 80% range.
Correct. And this is after doing all the pre-qualifying upfront.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
All the
Correct.
pre-qualifying upfront, right? So if you don't
Right.
do any pre-qualifying upfront, that number will be even huge. Right?
Correct.
So guys, any more questions for Wing? Any more ahas? What are some of your ahas right now? What are some of your ahas on the chat box right now? What are some of your ahas? What are you learning from this session today? Are you learning something today or not? Right, so that's where Wing can be reached. You can call him, subscribe to his social media platforms. He has a lot of education snippets that he puts on. There you go, all those things. Awesome. Can I have the announcement slides, please? I'll come back to you in a minute. Just give me I'll make some announcements.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, so I want to bring your attention to our trainings that we are having now. You have this is our day 3 of training. As we promised, every single day or every week, there will definitely be trainings on the regional level and the market center level. I hope these are some of the values that you are getting from us to make sure that you are best equipped for the business. Tomorrow, I will encourage everyone to sign up for Tyler Shields. Can I have Tyler Shields poster, please? Tyler Shields training. He is going to share with us about command. He was a person that didn't believe in command, right? And then he went on and he's now using command to systematically follow up and market his properties through campaigns, which is already available for us right now to use in Malaysia, how you can use Facebook campaigns and all that. And then Wing is also using Facebook campaigns on command right now, and they're getting some results or seeing some movement. So I encourage everyone, please sign up for this session. It's kind of difficult for us to secure him, but he was interviewed by Google and Josh team from US in Mega Camp, and I thought it was a very good interview. So I wanted him to come and share with you guys how he's running his business through technology and how is he running his business right now in this challenging market. Next, we have on Friday, Jonathan Quack will work on the mindset situation for us. Now, you all see today, there's so much transaction in the market. Now, if the transaction is not, you are not hitting any transaction despite of the volume and the value of transaction in the market today, perhaps it's something to work on right now for your business. And I think everything that we need to work on, it comes and starts from your mindset, the way you think, the way you look, the way you see your business, and you see the opportunity. Are we in a crisis or opportunity? That's why we named this whole entire season the Crisis Opportunity Series. There is so much opportunity that you have right now in the market, and I think the mindset part is very critical. So go ahead and sign up for this series on Friday, okay? Now, we'll be announcing more trainings next week. We have already planned up to 6 weeks of trainings ahead with the anticipation of CMCO coming ahead, okay? You can share the screen right now. Share the screen, please. Thank you. So, Wing, what are some of your last thoughts to everyone in this room right now? What are some of your last thoughts?
No, I think everybody just focus and work a lot harder. There's a lot of things can still be done. Now, doesn't necessarily means physical viewing. There's many things that still can be done. So, so hopefully the next time I see everybody is we no longer in MCO.
Okay, now this is the last announcement to everyone. Now, many people have reached out to me and the leadership team about what's happening, the new announcement by the government and all. I want to assure everyone, just hang on there. We are waiting for guidelines from MITI. We are waiting for certain guidelines. We are calling up police stations to just clarify certain stuff. Just hang on. We will be making some announcement for you this later today. But as far as we are concerned, all systems go. Even though some of us are going to be working from home, we are there to support you. So be rest assured that we'll do our best to make sure that all your businesses are still in place. So take care very much. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. We'll see you at the next training. Thank you, Wing, for taking time of your business to do this session with us. It's very informative and I think it's very helpful. Thank you, everyone. You all have a good rest of the day.